Welcome back to the show team. My name's Amelia, and today we have a very exciting guest on the show. I'm so excited. You'll love this. We have Paula, who is a senior research officer at Phillip Island Nature Park. So welcome to the show, Paula.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Obviously, we're only here to talk about penguins, not you. No, that's a joke.
That's fair. No, that's fair.
So what is a penguin's job? No, but that's actually a really interesting question. No, we'll start with what is your job?
Right. So, yes, like you said, I'm a senior research officer for the Phillip Island Nature Parks. So, a lot of my work involves collecting the field data for our penguin research that we do. So, I'm out in the field a lot. But then, of course, there's all the office stuff as well, all the playing around with the data and a lot of training of students and, PhD candidates and all sorts of other things that I do as well. But it's primarily field based.
Oh, that sounds like fun. You go out into the field and hug the penguins, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, I give them cuddles. No, fun fact, if you ever did try to do that, you would start bleeding because penguins are highly aggressive.
But they look so cute at a distance. They're such little tricky ones. And obviously, for everyone, don't hug a penguin ever,
No.
or any native animal. That was a terrible joke on my behalf, and I probably misled a whole lot of people. I apologize. What do we need to know about penguins?
Right, what you need to know about penguins, I think, I work specifically with little penguins, so they are the world's smallest penguin. But even though they might be small and comical, they are fierce apex predators. They are a key indicator species. So we study the penguins, but by studying the penguins, we then learn more about that whole ecosystem around them. They spend 80% of their lives out in the ocean. We might see them on land, that's when we see them, but they actually are a marine species. And so by understanding the penguins more, we understand the marine environment better.
That's very convenient. We've got a whole lot of little researchers that go out into the environment. And so do you do research about them when they're on land, or do you go out? I don't know. Do you send a robot out swimming with them, or?
So, well, we do both. Well, we don't put robots out at sea. Actually, we will be putting out a sailing drone, but that's a future project that I won't be involved in, but that's going to be really cool. But the way we do it is by, yes, studying them on land, by using a lot of technology. So we have these wonderful automated penguin monitoring systems, which we have 3 of them when you put them on a major penguin pathway, because penguins use the same pathways to go back to the burrows or out into the ocean every evening. And that way we can get their weights without having to handle them or anything like that, hands off as much as we can. We can see when they come and go from the colony. And so from that, we can infer, all right, they're doing 5-day trips when they're in incubation and they're coming back this much heavier. So we can get an idea of how far away the food is, for example. But then we do biologging. So we do put GPS and dive depth recorders on them. So we get a bit of a 3D picture of what the penguins are doing out in the ocean, how far they're traveling, how deep they're diving. And then we do a lot of diet studies as well. And so that's through blood samples for stable isotope to get an idea of what trophic level they're feeding at. And I spend a lot of time actually collecting poo, a lot of time collecting penguin poo. And we use that for DNA analysis. And that'll tell us species specific what they've been eating, the last 24 hours or so.
I feel like there's a lot of things, a lot of follow-up questions, right? I don't know which one to pick, but how bad does penguin poo smell?
So just imagine you only eat a fish milkshake and then that comes out.
I'll let that sit with you. You can, listeners, that they can sit with you for a moment. I think we can all just appreciate Paula a little bit more. What do we not know about little penguins?
What do we not know? Well, that's a really good question. I was actually reading today about how we actually haven't studied, as far as I'm aware, why penguins are generally black and white. Or blue and white in the little penguin's case. It seems like a really obvious thing.
Mm.
We've always said it's counter shading. When they're white underneath, then, predators from below can't see them. But when they're dark at the top, predators from up above can't see them. But that actually hasn't been proven.
Because that's something that's something that, oops, that you see like literally any marine kind of museum thing. There'll be the little diorama that will show the penguin underneath, and look, you can't see the
Yeah.
penguin.
Yeah.
Right,
I should
like a
probably
pro.
fact check that myself, actually. I was reading, and then I was watching a YouTube video about that. Apparently, no one's actually proven that. Or do they have this counter shading because to warm themselves up when they're in the cold ocean and their back's exposed to the sun? Is that warming them up? You know, is that what it is? Is it dark feathers are stronger and less likely to break, and if they're tumbling down rocks or whatever, is that why they're black and white? There's other
Okay, so
questions out there.
there's a whole field of like potential questions to be asked about
In terms of the
penguin colours.
colouring. But I mean, when it comes to, I guess, the bigger questions, trying to really nail down what penguins do out in the ocean. The ocean is a big mysterious place, and there's always questions being asked. And now, when conditions are changing as well, down here in southeastern Victoria or southeastern Australia in the waters, we are warming 4 times faster than a lot of other places, the ocean around here. And what that change means to the little penguins, and we don't know. We're in a dynamic environment at the moment, and so trying to collect as much information as we can and observe these things as they happen, and really keep our finger on the pulse. That's going to be the big thing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really big questions in there. I'm curious what it is about Phillip Island, because there's a huge penguin colony there, and there's sort of similar landscapes along the Victorian, I guess maybe South Australian coast. Why are there more penguins at Phillip Island?
So yes, we are the largest little penguin colony, and look, it's not by fluke. First of all, we do a massive amount of conservation work. So back in the 1980s, I think it was in 1980, it was predicted that by around about the year 2000, there actually wouldn't be any penguins left on Phillip Island. There were some massive, particularly terrestrial threats that the penguins were facing here on Phillip Island. Foxes, massive ones foxes. On the Summerlands Peninsula, where the giant penguin colony is, there was a housing estate put there. So there was massive habitat loss as well for the penguins, and all the issues that people bring with them, unfortunately. Penguins on the road at night, cars driving around, dogs, cats, things like that. And it was through a lot of work that we have now managed to have the biggest penguin colony. So in the 80s, the state government actually implemented the buyback scheme, where this housing estate was bought back by the government. So the people who lived there, who owned houses, who owned blocks there, they couldn't build any new dwellings, they couldn't do any sort of major renovations, and they could only sell back to the government. And in 2010, I think that started in 1985, and in 2010, the last house was removed, and that entire peninsula is now, penguin zone, basically. It's been transformed to penguin habitat, and that has had a massive impact on boosting up those numbers. We are now fox free as well. 2017, we were declared fox free through our conservation work, through our pest animal team. A massive, massive achievement. We knew that one fox could kill 30 plus penguins in an evening because, they cache, they surplus kill. So removing all the foxes has had a massive impact. And then in terms of, I guess, the marine space here, how I was saying southeastern Australia is warming at such a rapid rate. We're in Bass Strait, and our penguins mainly hang around in Bass Strait. They go into Port Phillip Bay as well. But Bass Strait is actually quite shallow. So we have this warming and strengthening East Australian current. But those really warm waters haven't actually massively encroached into Bass Strait yet. So we've had a little bit of warming here, but not quite as much as what you're seeing off, the coast of New South Wales and extending down to the coast of Tassie as well.
So it's a whole lot of factors, including just like a lot of work.
A lot of work, a lot of work. We wouldn't have the penguins anymore if it wasn't for all that work.
It's kind of a terrifying thought.
It is. It is. We actually used to have 10 different little penguin colonies around Phillip Island, so they were all lost, and now we've got the big Summerlands Peninsula. It's a terrifying thought, but also, I think, also really heartwarming to see what can happen with the right support. The nature parks, before COVID hit, we were self-funded, so it was via people visiting the Penguin Parade or any of our parks, the Koala Conservation Reserve or Churchill Island, and that helped pay for the conservation work that we do. I think it's a really wonderful story of success and how you can use tourism in such a wonderful way to protect what we love.
Very kind of targeted, very
Yeah,
effective.
yeah, absolutely.
Now, you said you talk to people as part of your job. Are there any, but I mean, obviously, that was a very poor question. You talk
Occasionally,
specifically to, people who are learning and students, etc. Have you been asked like a particularly entertaining or favorite question?
oh my goodness me, that's a good one. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, there's lots and lots of random questions. You're working with penguins, yeah? There are lots of random questions. But there aren't any silly ones. So everyone can ask me whatever they like, and I don't judge. No, nothing's standing out, unfortunately.
That's okay. It's always worth asking, just in
Yeah.
case like a little kid asks you a fantastic question. Have you seen any other types, breeds of penguins in the wild?
So we occasionally do get different penguins washing up on the beaches. So fiordlands and rockhopper penguins do wash up, and they are usually in a bit of a bad state. And so they go into our wildlife clinic and get rehabilitated and re-released. Personally, I have also gone and seen other penguins in the wild, and every time I have, I've cried out of joy. I saw yellow-eyed penguins in New Zealand, and they're amazing. They're an endangered species that are really in strife and just really special when you get to see one in the wild. African penguins as well, another endangered species. I went to Boulders in South Africa, and that was amazing. These penguins are out during the day. It's such a treat when you see penguins out during the day, because little penguins are nocturnal on land. And yeah, that was an amazing experience as well.
Yeah. There's just something so enticing about a penguin.
Yeah, you try to nail it down. What is it? They're such, I mean, they are comical creatures. They are, I do call them the clowns of the animal kingdom, let's be honest. But they're bloody tough, yeah?
Oh,
When
you
you see
see
it,
some of, yeah, well, you see the penguins that are doing this belly dives down the rocks or something. I wouldn't do that.
yeah, that's right. And despite their appearances, they are these endurance athletes, yeah? They swim faster than us. And trust me, when you have to try to chase down and catch a penguin, they actually can run pretty fast too.
But when you see the footage of them underwater, they're just so elegant.
Yeah, well, they're made for the water. Yeah, they're little torpedoes made for the marine environment, because that's where they spend most of their lives.
But we can't just talk about penguins. So, what does an average day at work look like for you?
An average day, I don't really think I have an average day, to be honest. It depends on the time of the year. So during the spring and the summer, that's when we are in breeding mode on Phillip Island. That's when our penguins are breeding, and that's when I spend most of my time out in the field. So usually before I head out, I will have a quick check through some databases. So every night at the penguin parade, the rangers actually count how many penguins come across during the parade. And I like to check that each morning so I can get an idea of what I might find in the colony. I also check one of the weight bridges as well to see what weights they were coming in at. Just kind of psych myself up. All right, what's it going to be like when I go out there? And then usually I send the kids off to school, and then I go out into the field. We do some basic burrow monitoring, so that is identifying, I guess, which penguins in which burrow. We microchip all of our penguins in our study sites, but less than 5% of the colony's microchipped. So it's only a small proportion that get microchipped, but all the ones that we work with are. So we can see who's with who and how they change and what stage of the breeding season they're at. And if they have chicks, I, weigh them and do morphometric measurements to see how those chicks are going. So that's kind of our baseline monitoring. And then depending on what I see out in the field, I might have to quickly go and collect some cardboard to put in the entrance to collect poo the next day, or get the blood sampling kit ready or anything like that. And yeah, I might have a PhD candidate out with me that I'm training. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, of course, it's cleaning up. There's lots of cleaning up. When you're handling penguins, are getting covered in penguin poo. Then downloading our scanners and doing some data work, data checks, and making sure all that's accurate. And yeah, this time of year, that's probably a basic day. Yeah.
Are there any diseases a person can catch from a penguin?
Look, I haven't seen anyone that I've worked with, and myself, I haven't seen anyone. I haven't gotten sick from them before, but certainly it's something you keep an eye out, particularly respiratory diseases with birds. And now there's a giant, highly pathogenic avian influenza outbreak, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere. And we are keeping an eye out for that if that comes to Australia. We've never had highly pathogenic avian influenza here in Australia. We usually have the low pathogenic that comes and doesn't cause much of an issue. So we are on high alert for that. And if that does come into Australia and come to the penguin colony, then that is certainly something that humans are susceptible to. And it's something like a 40 to 50% mortality rate for humans, so I'd rather not get it. But overall, they're not too much of an issue that we've had yet in terms of diseases. And obviously we are pretty careful. Yeah, we practice good hygiene practices with the birds.
Yeah. Because there's always like normal bad things you can get from handling animal poo as well.
Yeah, and you're in the ground and there's feral cats around, and it used to be a housing estate, so I'm sure there were pet cats, and there's toxo no doubt in the soil, so you just have to be careful.
All the things that, you don't have to worry about if you've got a desk job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. A bit of added adrenaline to my day. It's all right.
Yeah. It sounds like a job with quite a range of different possibilities throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just, just a sprinkling of what I do. Sometimes I am part of a team that runs, oil spill training workshops for, state government and things like that. So there's lots of different things I do. Sometimes I have a film crew out in the field with me, who knows what's going to happen.
Yep. They're probably to focus in on the very cute little penguins. Yeah. It's understandable. Very understandable. What's your favourite part of your job?
My favourite part of my job, it's kind of morphing. I love research. I really love that I contribute to answering these questions that then have these amazing conservation outcomes. And the fact that I've been working with the penguins for the better part of 15 years. And so I see, the work that I do and then the conservation outcomes from that. And that's really, really rewarding. Really rewarding. But also I'm really starting to enjoy talking about the work that I do, sharing the knowledge that I have. I go every year to some other different little penguin colonies around Tasmania, and I share some of that knowledge with different volunteer groups or with the Bishano Penguin Tours, another penguin company tourism company down in Tasmania. And I love sharing that knowledge and then getting feedback. We implemented some of your ideas and we're already seeing these positive outcomes. And that is just so heartwarming. It's what I do. It's why I do what I do, to help, not only conserve little penguins, but conserve the environment around them.
Yep. The whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that's such a, I don't want to say lucky, but is a rare opportunity to be in a position where you're doing research in the organization where they can actually implement it and you've got that kind of tight loop to actually
Yeah.
close thing in. That's novel.
It's really interesting that it is quite the rare thing because it works so well.
Surprise.
It works so well, and yeah, you think it should be everywhere, yeah? Having that, like I said, that closed loop.
Yeah. In the same coffee room, like you've got people talking and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge difference. How did you get to where you are now? What was the plan when, say, you were in high school versus what actually happened?
You know, in high school, I never I never had this drive to do science or research. I never had even the understanding that science was something I could do. I certainly never had the role model. I think the closest role model as a kid would have, showing my age, would have probably been Ranger Stacy on Agro's Cartoon Connection. Yeah, yeah. Are
Mm-hmm.
you in that era? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And how amazing was she? I actually spent most of my high school doing drama and theatre, and it came to like the final few days where you had to put in like uni preferences. I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had a meeting with the careers advisor, and she was like, "Right, what are you going to put down?" I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea what I want to do with my life. Maybe, I really liked wildlife. I really liked animals. Maybe I'll be a vet nurse. And she's like, "Well, have you thought about science?" Why would I think about science? I like animals. Like, I don't know.
Oh
What are you
no.
talking? Right? I hadn't even made that connection. And she was like, "Well, how about zoology?" I'm like, "What is that?" Like, is that a thing? That's how much I didn't know. And and so I looked into it and I went, "Yeah, okay, cool. That sounds pretty good. I'll give it a crack. No idea what I'm doing." And I got into science at Monash and I just fell in love. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the biological sciences, but then I loved that you could do a little bit of everything. So I also did some astronomy and astrophysics, and I loved the astronomy part of it. I learned very quickly that physics is not a forte of mine. But if you're a woman or non-binary person listening, then and you're interested in physics, do it because it needs more representation. Very heavily male dominated. So if you've got a knack for it, do it. And then I did like of some arts as well. So I did sociology because humans are just like weird big animals, yeah. so, so I could actually get a minor in sociology if I wanted to because I did so much of that. But yeah, so then I concentrated on biological sciences and in zoology. Third year, I completely nerded out on the zoology aspect and I loved it. I loved it so much. In third year at Monash, you get the option to go to Heron Island to run a little research project, and that was amazing. I think that really sparked my love of research. Just that whole from asking the question to investigating it, I just loved it so much. So yeah, I really fell in love with research, and then it came to my honours year, and they say don't choose what you're going to do your honours on the species, choose it on the field that you're really interested in. And then I saw there was honours in penguins. And honestly, I chose to do that because penguins. And as it turns out, they exceeded my expectations for the most fascinating species and just the whole greater field around them. That it's not just the penguins; it's that whole ecosystem that you're working with. So fascinating. I fell in love with them. But then after my honours year, I really wanted to, I guess, experience the real world. I'd been in education my entire life from primary school, high school, uni. I wanted to get out there. I spent a year doing like wildlife education stuff, and then a job came up with the penguins. So penguins went, got that job, and I've been here ever since. I've always wanted to go back and do my PhD eventually, but then I kind of sat down as some people do and thought, what's more important, this PhD or having a family? And I went the family route, but now the kids are getting a bit older, so now I'm playing around with options of PhD for prior publication potentially in the next 10 years or something, having those discussions with work. So I kind of feel like I'm starting a new journey now that the kids are a bit older, and we'll see where it goes.
And you are never too old to actually do a PhD.
That's right, except to stop employment to do a PhD and raise a family, very, very difficult, and mad props to those that do.
That's a very different thing, yes.
Yeah, that's right. But, if you can investigate ways to work and do something like by prior publication, that would be amazing. So that's, different avenues I'm looking at.
So do you publish your research?
No, so, well, I collect the data that then gets published. But no, I don't at the moment. My position doesn't write papers, which is something that I'm working towards. It's something that is now within, I've got a new title now that's within that role. And it's trying to, work that into my current role. I certainly have a lot of questions that I'd love to answer. We have a lot of data that can be used for it as well. So that's the direction that I'm heading to now. There are some papers that I'm named in, but not ones that I've written myself.
Fantastic. I feel like your careers counsellor deserves a high five.
Yeah, right? Mrs. Carl Smart. I still remember. Yeah, because I would have had no idea if it wasn't for her.
Like, yeah, that's impressive for her to be able to see the interest and be able to see different ways that you could achieve that.
Especially since, because science was never on my cards. Like I said, I was a big drama nerd. I wasn't a science nerd. And for her to see that potential was, pretty amazing.
Do you think you use any of the drama now?
I think I'm re-sparking that love now as I do the last, I guess, year especially. I've been doing a lot more media stuff, bits and pieces. And it is kind of now combining that, my knowledge of conservation, of penguins, and now combining that to communicate that. I guess I'm kind of trying to meld the two perhaps now. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing, but I think that might be a bit of what's going on.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of an important thing for people to realize is just because someone's got a cool job and a cool job title doesn't mean that they're finished. We keep developing and learning and creating new things. So
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to understand the different barriers, first of all, that people face and different life decisions they make, and that just because perhaps that they're not at a certain level or other people are, first of all, doesn't mean that they don't have a massive amount of knowledge and a massive understanding in that field. But that also they still have a huge potential.
yeah. Is there any advice you wished you could have given young Paula?
Yeah, and I guess not to hold back. I think I spent a lot of my life holding back. And perhaps that's also changing now that as you get older, you tend to give zero stuffs.
Mm-hmm.
And really just lean into what you love to do and not let, I guess, other people sway you as much. I wish I'd done that earlier. But look, I'm pretty proud of young Paula. She did a lot. I went to Costa Rica and did volunteer work there. I'd advise anyone who wants to get into conservation work or research or anything like that, particularly with wildlife, to do a lot of volunteering. See what it's like and see what you like. And go for it. Yeah, don't let the barriers, don't let a no stop you. Figure out a way around. There's always a workaround. It might take you longer, but you work it out.
That's particularly important in, I guess, the high demand roles, like anything working with charismatic fauna.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really impressive. There are quite a few, particularly women that I work with, that are working elsewhere within the organisation, that are just so tenacious, that are just so keen to get into the research, and they will take any opportunity and just keep on trying, and they're just so amazing. And they'll end up where they want to be because they just keep on giving it a go.
Is there any other advice you'd give to basically the people who want your job?
I'm holding on to it with both hands. Any other advice that I'd give? It's really just getting that experience. Experience is amazing, especially when you are working in a job or you want to go into a job that is heavily field based. It's a hands on experience. It might not be with the species, for example, that perhaps you want to work with or whatever, but any type of that hands on experience and working, if you can, with data sets and things like that is so important. You know, the degrees are one thing, they're wonderful, but actually having that experience is it's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, actually knowing how to use some of the equipment and what it takes to organize a field expedition, all that sort of stuff.
You know, and it's one thing, yeah, to know the theory behind it, but can you pull a penguin out of a natural burrow and handle it and put it into a bag without hurting yourself or hurting the penguin? They require some skills.
I can just imagine a uni room that's full of like little robotic penguins for training people. What a thought. Now, obviously, you would interact with the public, and
Not
I'm
a lot,
very.
actually. You know, I don't actually interact a lot with the public. I'm 99% of the time, it's just me and the penguins.
Yeah, right. Okay. In that case, let's not. I'm sure you talk to the public, like, at parties or school functions, etc., like
Yeah.
normal people do. I'm curious if there's any myths or misconceptions, and I'm guessing there's actually a lot that people have about whether it's your job or penguins or Phillip Island Nature Parks that you would like to take this opportunity to do a bit of myth busting.
Mm. Well, yes, absolutely. When it comes to the penguins, everyone thinks they're cute and cuddly instead of understanding that they're fierce apex predators, that they are so vital in the ecosystem, and how that they are essentially, canary in the coal mines. They are important to study, to learn, to understand the environment around them. So they're not just cute and cuddly. They're not cute and cuddly at all, actually, but they are actually these amazing, tenacious animals that I want to say tool. They're not a tool, of course, but they're a vital species to understand, to learn, to understand the greater world around them. When it comes to my job, I think a lot of people don't realize what I actually do. It wasn't until I did a bit of the TV stuff. I was on, the Meet the Penguins documentary on the ABC. That on ABC iView right now, I think. I don't think until friends saw that. I got a lot of messages, people going, "What is your job?" I had no idea that's what you do. So yeah, that's a good way to see what I do if you watch that.
What did people think you do?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think people understand when you say you work with penguins. Yes, you work with penguins. You have to remove them from the burrows and do stuff with them. That's how you work with penguins. I don't know. And I guess if we come to myth busting for Phillip Island Nature Parks, I think a lot of people don't realise that we're a conservation organisation. I think a lot of people see the penguin parade, see our other parks, and think that we're just a tourism organisation. They don't realise that, just by visiting, you're helping our conservation work that we do. And that, we actually have a massive impact. We are, up there with world leaders in little penguin research. We are the world's largest little penguin colony, not by fluke, but through the hard work that we do.
And I can sort of see if you weren't really paying attention when you visited and you weren't actually reading the signs and stuff, you might be able to get that idea that it's just about tourism. But yeah, there's amazing communication done as well.
There is. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just, and we're not just penguins. We, a few years ago, released eastern barred bandicoots on Phillip Island, on Churchill Island, obviously with all the partners behind that, but remove them off the extinction list. Hello, that's pretty huge. We Dr. Rebecca McIntosh, she researches the Aussie fur seals here. We've got the largest Aussie fur seal colony off Phillip Island. She does amazing work with the research there, drone work there, hands off drone work. doing population counts and things like that. Great citizen science project that she has created called Seal Spotter. So if you love your citizen science, jump onto Seal Spotter, where you get to count seals and point out entanglements and things like that. So there's a lot that we do.
It's not just penguins.
It's not just penguins. I mean, I'm biased. I think penguins are the best, but the other species have their place too.
That's a little bit cheeky. Okay. So there was just the myth about what on earth you do for work, which clearly there was some confusion. I suspect most people don't actually know what their friends and family do as a job.
Yeah,
I don't think you're alone.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Penguins are obviously wonderful apex predators and not cute and cuddly. Yeah, there's some great myths to. Have you got a shout out for us? A virtual high five for someone or someone's who you think is doing an awesome job and just deserves lots of virtual high fives?
Oh, look, I already mentioned her. I'm going to mention Beck again, Dr. Rebecca McIntosh. I love her work. I think she's such a human, first of all, such a relatable human. A mum juggling it all. And her work is just so amazing that she does. She's, created this Bins on Boats project as well to reduce the amount of entanglement material that goes out into the ocean that things can get entangled in, particularly seals, this seal spotter program. The fact that, she flies drones over the seal colony now to get photos rather than, having to land and cause that huge amount of disturbance in these colonies. She does some really exciting stuff, and I love her work, and I love her. So I want to give her a big shout out.
Fantastic. Lots of high fives to Dr. Rebecca. Sounds like an absolute legend.
She is.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Paula. This has been delightful. We're all stoked about penguins, and everything's pretty good.
Thank you very much for having me.